So I'm a Greener grad. I went to Evergreen State College, and they had a sailboat, and one of the classes I took of a variety of things was maritime history. And we actually went out on the sailboats, and I was hooked. Part of why I love shipping and sailing is it incorporated so many different elements. The science, it was physical, it's intuitive, you have to feel it, you're outside, you can keep reading, learning the history. We belong to a brotherhood and sisterhood that's 3,000 to 5,000 years old. And so there's just an incredible richness to it. So my senior year, I ended up having a chance to volunteer on the Lady Washington, which by being part of the history and learning it, that also fueled that passion. But I had absolutely no clue that there was a commercial industry or even a way to make a living. I knew that there's sailboats and lots of non-paying jobs out there. So after I graduated from college, I couldn't get a job anywhere, even at a gallery, and went back to doing what I had done before school. And another person, basically a volunteer position, long-term volunteer position opened up on Lady Washington, and I took it. And so I spent a year on her as an unpaid volunteer, working my way up to chief mate. And in hindsight, what I did was I ran away to sea to avoid growing up and finding a real job. I was 26 at the time, couldn't find work that I wanted to do, didn't know that I could get paid to do what I was interested in, so I ran away to sea. And that spring, the dock that we were at, a NOAA ship came by, and I went to talk to some of the crew members, and they said that they do ship OSs, ordinary seamen, entry-level sailors. And my eyes got really big. I said, "You mean you'll pay me to do this?" So the next day I go down to the NOAA docks, and I got hired on as just dock labor and worked the summer, week on, week off, chief mate on Lady Washington and working the docks until position opened up on their stern trawler, their fishing boat that worked up in Alaska. And in choosing that as a first paid job was, I figured, if I could work on a fishing boat in Alaska in winter, I could do anything.
You're right.
So I ended up working on a research fishing boat in Alaska as an entry-level deckhand. And from there, it just kept going. As I found out that each level was actually within reach, I would take the exams. And part of the full circle for me is I got on one of their other research ships in Hawaii. So I was on a white government research ship in Hawaii and take my AB, my Able Seaman's ticket. So that was my first exam. 10 years later, I was on a different white government research ship as a second mate and had studied for my chief mate master's license. We pulled into Pearl Harbor, and in Hawaii, I took my last set of exams 10 years later. So, and then last summer, I had the sea time for my master's. And over the years, so I've worked as, did get hired on as master of the Lady Washington, and pretty much that was it. It's like every time I got a new rank, somebody actually had a job somewhere and was willing to pay me to do it. But overall, for me, what I'm so excited about is because I still get to see the world, get to meet different people. Every ship is different, so I'm learning different things. I'm still passionate about knowing the history and where we've come from and the recent history of appreciating what a lot of the women before me have gone through. The question always does come up, what have we faced about sexual harassment? And I unfortunately get to quantify mine. I have never been scared, luckily. I have to add that word in there, is realizing that very few others have been that lucky. We all get to deal with strange personalities. I have been lucky. I have never been scared in my situations. And overall, it's getting better, both the men and the women that we work with, but being the only female on board on the majority of my jobs. Being a supervisor, it's another thing, is realizing that most of these men have had very few female supervisors. I have had very few female supervisors. I've had maybe 2 in 20 years. So realizing I'm actually becoming one of the role models for the next generation is that I haven't even had what I'm giving to others. And so now I work as a second or third mate doing the Alaska cargo run. So I'm still up in Alaska in winters.